close your eyes down and begin taking some nice, deep breaths. And we'll hang out here for a little while doing some nice, deep breathing. And I look at this as an opportunity to just let go. Let go of anything that's happened so far today or anything coming up later. Maybe you'd like to imagine breathing all of those things away, allowing yourself to take this time free of all of that. Breathing away any obligations or responsibilities. Breathing away any incomplete tasks or anything that's been on your mind. Those things can all wait. And often when we take a break away from them for a little while, we can go back to them with renewed energy, enthusiasm, and ideas. And so for now, just breathing it all away, letting yourself take this time free of all of that. And now just turn your attention to any sounds that you can pick up on, still continuing to take nice, deep breaths, but turning your attention to any of the sounds in your environment. By taking some time off the top to observe those sounds, you'll find that as we progress into the session, you're able to just leave those sounds in the distance without them interfering. And so noticing whatever those sounds are. Listening for the obvious ones, but also listening underneath or behind those sounds for anything subtle, anything distant, whatever you can observe. And once you've listened to the sounds that are actually taking place, take some time to consider, when I'm quiet, any additional sounds that could happen while we're in session. What are the sounds that are normal or expected for your environment that could occur as we progress forward? Now, by taking some time off the top to listen to sounds that are taking place and to think about ones that might, you'll find that you're nicely able to leave any of the sounds in the background, able to focus on my voice and your own experience, and let everything else be unimportant for now. Now, continuing to breathe deeply, just take some time to get a sense of the room that you're in. Now, I know that you know what this space looks like, but by getting a sense of the space with your eyes closed, it requires you to use your memory or imagination, both of which reside in your subconscious mind. And so this simple exercise can sort of draw your subconscious forward. And so take some time to get a sense of the size or shape of the room. Get a sense of the layout of any furniture in this space. Get a sense of where you are in relation to the furniture. Or tune in to something more subtle. Is there a fragrance or series of fragrances in the room? What is the temperature like in here right now? Just noticing the space, getting familiar with it, and as you do, settling in deeper still. And now bringing your attention within yourself and locating your center, wherever that seems to be. We're taking your attention away from the external world and placing it on your internal one. And this is, in a sense, to signify to your subconscious that we're going inside now, away from the external world and into your inner one. Hypnosis is all about your internal world, your habits, beliefs, behaviors, emotions, reactions, triggers. And when we work on our internal world, it changes how we are in the external one, or how we perceive the external one. And so for now, just observing your center. Where is it located? Does your center feel calm and quiet, or is there movement, activity? Does your center seem to be deep within your body, or is it closer to the surface? And there's no right or wrong answers to these questions. We're just observing. And letting your attention shift now from your center all the way back to your breathing. And just letting your attention rest there for a little while, noticing what it feels like to breathe. Maybe noticing the rise and fall of your chest with an inhale and an exhale. Maybe noticing a little sound that your breathing makes. Maybe noticing the difference in temperature from when you breathe in to when you release the breath. Just noticing whatever you notice as you focus on your breathing. And find one thing about your breathing that you can hold your attention on, a focal point for your awareness. And as well as you can, for as long as you can, just keep your attention there. Now, people go into hypnosis, they access deeper levels of their mind when they get focused on something. Just the act of finding something about your breathing to focus on and then holding your attention there is enough to get you into a state where you can make contact with your subconscious. And so, in a moment, I'm going to be quiet. And I'm going to be quiet for quite some time. In that quiet time, just stay as well as you can focused on your breathing. And I'm sure there will be times along the way when your mind will want to wander or drift, and that's okay. When that happens, just notice that it's happened, and then bring your attention back once again to your breathing. Letting go of everything else and just attending to your breathing. Doing that now while I'm quiet. In this session, we're going to work on developing self-compassion. Sometimes we can be mean to ourselves. We can be critical, judgmental, lack compassion. We can say things to ourselves that we would never say to another person, or that we would never allow another person to say to us. And those negative things that we say to ourselves can affect us. The problem is our subconscious is always listening in. If we say something to ourselves frequently enough, or we say it with enough conviction or emotion, it can be imprinted into the subconscious. The subconscious doesn't know that we're just in a bad mood or having a bad day. How the subconscious works is that it just takes in those messages that we're giving to ourselves, and then it acts on those messages. Sometimes the messages become self-fulfilling prophecy. The subconscious does whatever it is programmed to do. What we say to ourselves over and over or with enough intensity begins to shape who we are. And so again, in this session, we're going to practice self-compassion. Self-compassion means that you treat yourself with care and concern when confronted with your own mistakes, failures, or shortcomings. This means that you're kind to yourself. We approach ourselves with gentleness and understanding rather than harshly criticizing or judging ourselves. It means that we treat ourselves with unconditional positive regard. No matter what happens, no matter what perceived mistakes or errors or failures occur, we treat ourselves with respect, kindness, and dignity. We offer support and acceptance no matter what. And so in a moment, I'm going to be quiet. And in that quiet time, I'd like you to pick an aspect of yourself that you tend to criticize. Maybe it's your appearance, your career, a habit, a behavior, how you do relationships. Maybe it's where you are at currently in your life. Maybe it's a personality trait. And so taking some time now while I'm quiet to find the thing that you tend to criticize yourself for or beat yourself up about, bringing that to mind while I'm quiet. Now in a moment, I'm going to be quiet again. And in that quiet time, I'd like you to really dig in to how you feel when you think about this perceived inadequacy. I'd like you to consider what thoughts, images, stories, or emotions come up when you think about it. I'd like you to get really familiar with all of the things that arise when you focus on that aspect of yourself. I'm going to give you some time in quiet to consider this. Be thorough. Allow yourself to really experience and be aware of everything that's attached to this perceived inadequacy. Taking time to do that now. Now in a moment, but not quite yet, I'm going to have you imagine somebody within your mind who is unconditionally loving, accepting, and supportive. This could be a person that you have in your life currently, or somebody you've known in the past, a good friend, a family member. So you can pick a real person to use in this exercise, or maybe you imagine somebody that you know who is a compassionate, kind, and caring person, even if they're not necessarily real or they're somebody you've never met. One of my clients used Buddha for this exercise. Another one used her great-grandmother who she'd never met but had heard all kinds of positive stories about. Another one of my clients chose her dog for this exercise because her dog loves her no matter how she shows up. And so it can be anybody, real or fictional, anybody you can imagine, even someone you make up. But bringing to mind now the embodiment of somebody who is unconditionally loving, accepting, and supportive. Bringing that to mind while I'm quiet. Now in a moment, I'm going to have you imagine that this kind, compassionate being is speaking to you. This being is unconditionally loving. They're accepting and supportive. They embrace you kindly just as you are. This being sees your strengths, your talents, your skills, your abilities. They're also aware of your opportunities for growth, the things you think are negative about you. And I'd like you to imagine that this being is speaking to you. If it's a being that wouldn't normally speak, allow yourself to imagine it anyway. Maybe they communicate telepathically, or maybe you give them some way to be able to speak with you. Now I want you to imagine that this being is acknowledging your strengths. This being knows all of your skills, talents, abilities, and characteristics, all of the qualities that make you outstanding and unique. I'd like you to imagine this kind, compassionate being acknowledging all of those positive qualities within you. Imagine that they're speaking to you and about you, telling you all of the things that are lovable, admirable, and positive in nature. And while that being is speaking, I'd like you to just receive what they're saying. Take in their kind words. Assume that their words are true. There's no agenda here. There's no need for this being to flatter you. What they tell you is actually how they feel about you. It is factual. It's the truth. And so you can take it in. You can have it begin to inform your belief system and shift your internal voice. And so taking some time while I'm quiet to hear the being tell you about your strengths. Taking that time now while I'm quiet. Now in a moment, I'm going to be quiet again. In that quiet time, this time, I would like you to receive some encouragement and support from this kind, compassionate being with regards to changes that you might like to make within yourself. There are some things that you've perceived to be your weaknesses, your faults, or your flaws. Nobody is ever encouraged to do better by being beat up on. When we beat up on ourselves, it negatively affects our self-esteem. It drags us down. It doesn't lead to the changes we want to make. When we're low in energy because we've been put down, we don't have the ability to make the changes we like to make. On the other hand, when we have somebody in our corner, somebody who believes in us, somebody who is supportive of us, somebody who sees what we're capable of even if we're not there yet, that energizes us, it lifts us up. It makes us more able to achieve the things we wish to achieve. And so for now, this being is that for you. This being is in your corner. This being has got your back. This being believes in you. They see the best in you. This being sees what you're capable of. And so again, in a moment, I'm going to be quiet and give you some time to receive encouragement, support, compassion from this compassionate being? How does this being encourage and support you? What steps do they suggest you might take to make the changes you want to make? What advice do they have for you? How does it feel to have somebody have your back, be in your corner, see the best in you? And so this time around, hearing back from your kind, supportive being with regards to the changes that you might like to make. Taking time to do that now while I'm quiet. Now I'm going to ask you to do something that may seem a little odd, but bear with me, this is going somewhere. I want you to now imagine as I'm speaking that compassionate being is coming towards you, and that they actually blend with you, morph with you in some way. You and that compassionate being are now one. And because your subconscious is your creative mind, it understands the symbolism. You'll notice that you are beginning to internalize that kind, compassionate voice. You are becoming that being with regards to how you treat yourself. You are offering yourself that same support, that same kindness, that same compassion and understanding. You give yourself unconditional positive regard. You're self-accepting. Now, it's great if we have somebody in our lives who believes in us and supports us, but when we can learn to be that person for ourselves, that's when we're truly empowered. If we can only feel good when we have somebody who's pumping us up or being a cheerleader for us, then we're in trouble because other people may not be willing or able to do that. We may not have access to a person like that in our lives. True empowerment occurs when we can learn to give to ourselves the things we most want from other people. See, the problem is that we often look to other people to have our needs met. If we feel the need for support or acceptance, we look to others. If we want a cheerleader in our lives, we look for another person to fill that role. But again, other people may not be capable. They may be inconsistent or unreliable or focused on their own lives, not available to us. And that means that our happiness and our self-esteem is dependent on something external to us, something that we may not always have access to. This means that we have no control or ability to influence our self-esteem for ourselves. And so we want to pull away from relying on external forces or other people to be our sources of support and acceptance. We want to learn to be that compassionate being for ourselves. When we can be that supportive person for ourselves, we don't require it from anyone else. If we get it from someone else, it's great. It's the cherry on top, but it isn't necessary. When we learn to provide for ourselves the things that we most want from other people, that changes everything. See, when we need it from other people, we may put up with behavior from others that isn't acceptable in order to get the things that we want. Sometimes I liken this to a starving man. If you're starving, you'll be ready to eat anything, even the crumbs that somebody else offers you. If you need a fix of compassion or support and are unable to give it to yourself, you might put up with behavior from others that isn't acceptable in order to get the occasional supportive comment or the occasional feeling of somebody else being in your corner. If we need other people in order to feel good about ourselves, it makes us dependent on other people. But again, if we can learn to give to ourselves, when we can be that compassionate, kind, supportive, and accepting person to ourselves, we won't accept anything less from somebody else. When we're kind and compassionate to ourselves, we see the contrast if somebody else treats us unkindly. We won't be willing to accept that from somebody else. We become the first example of how we want other people to treat us. And you'll find that by doing this exercise, it has lasting positive effect on you. You'll notice, for example, that you have a stronger and more positive self-image. You'll notice tangible proof that your subconscious has taken in all of those kind things that being said about you. Sometimes other people can see us more clearly than we can see ourselves. And that kind being had wonderful things to say about you. And because they had no agenda, no reason to flatter you, you'll find that those things they said have really sunk into your subconscious mind, and they're beginning to shift how you look at yourself. As a result of morphing with that kind, compassionate being, you'll notice that your own self-talk is more positive and encouraging and supportive, like a really good friend has taken up residence inside your mind. Your own self-talk is more uplifting and encouraging. You're able to recognize the positive things within yourself, able to give yourself credit for your strengths, talents, skills, abilities, and characteristics, able to see the good within yourself. You'll notice that you take time over the course of any given day to acknowledge something within yourself that you quite like. And there's more and more of that to see all of the time. Like a game of I Spy. When we begin looking for the color red, it pops out at us. We notice it everywhere. We'll see what it is we go looking for. And so as you begin to notice more positive qualities within yourself, you see more and more of those positive qualities. Having had this opportunity to hear from that kind, compassionate being the positive things they see in you, you'll find that you're noticing more and more of those things within yourself. Every human being has things about themselves that are outstanding and unique, and you're no exception. And so you'll notice that you're recognizing those things that you possess. Your self-talk is improving. Your self-worth is improving. Your self-image is improving. You're feeling better and better about yourself. And it's okay to feel good about yourself. We live in a society where we're taught that it's vain or egotistical to think well about ourselves. But again, every human being has positive qualities and traits, and you are no exception. It's not egotistical to recognize good things within yourself. It's actually truthful. And so you'll notice that you see those things within yourself more easily. You're able to acknowledge them, to own them, to celebrate them. And when it comes to the things that you perceive as your imperfections or your flaws, you'll notice something shifting here as well. Now, some of those things just are what they are. They're not within our ability to change. And you'll discover that when it comes to the things that just are what they are, you're more accepting of them. We don't have to be perfect to be enough. In fact, there's no such thing as perfection. Every human being is perfectly imperfect. In fact, right now, as I'm speaking, I'd like you to bring to mind somebody that you've loved. Maybe it's somebody you love currently, maybe it's somebody from your past, but somebody that you've loved. And I'm going to make a little rule here that they have to be over 10 years old. And so bringing to mind somebody that you've loved who's over the age of 10. Now I want you to take some time to consider if this person is perfect. Now chances are, if you really know this person, if you've had the privilege of seeing into their internal world, they have some imperfections, and yet you love them. And so you've proven that people can be lovable even with imperfections. We can be enough, we can be worthy, we can be admirable, even with imperfections. And so if you could love somebody else who is imperfect, perhaps you could extend that same love to yourself. And so you'll notice that you're more accepting of the things that cannot be changed. They just are what they are, and you're okay with that. You can love yourself even with what you perceive to be imperfections. Now, when it comes to what you perceive as imperfections that you're capable of changing, things that you might want to change, you'll notice that you're moving on to making the changes that you want to make. Instead of beating yourself up or putting yourself down, instead of judgment or criticism, you simply move on to making the changes so that you're more aligned with who you would like to be. I can spend my time worrying about an exam that I have coming up, or I can spend my time studying for the exam. You'll notice that instead of beating yourself up or putting yourself down over things that are changeable, you're taking that time and energy and putting it towards making the changes you desire. And so you're able to recognize the difference between things you can do something about, the things that you can change, and the things that are beyond your ability to control. You're more accepting of the things you cannot change, and you move on to making the changes you wish to make when it comes to the areas in your life that you do have some ability to improve. Nobody is ever motivated to do better by being put down. It's an unkind act to beat ourselves up or to judge ourselves. It doesn't make our behavior any better. It just makes us feel hurt to receive judgment or criticism. And so if there are areas within yourself or within your life that you would like to change, you make a plan. You follow through on that plan so that you can get the results that you want. And if you need a gentle reminder to be kind and compassionate to yourself once again, you can always bring in that kind, compassionate being to help you out. That kind, compassionate being will show up here anytime you wish. All you have to do is imagine them within your mind. And that kind, compassionate being can give you support, help you come up with steps you can take to make the changes you desire. They'll act as your cheerleader along the way. That kind, compassionate being reminds you to be that person for yourself. Anytime you imagine or visualize that kind, compassionate being, it speaks to your subconscious in a language your subconscious understands. It reminds your subconscious to be that kind, compassionate being for yourself. It reminds your subconscious to approach yourself with kindness, compassion, support, respect, and acceptance. Now in a moment, I'm going to count from 1 up to 5. As I do, you'll feel yourself returning to normal waking awareness. Mind waking up, body waking up, feeling better than before. When I say 5, you can open your eyes, refreshed, alert, awake, and aware, and ready to take on whatever else you've got on the go for the remainder of the day. Number 1. Getting a great sleep tonight, and while you sleep, your subconscious will continue to process and integrate these suggestions so that they're even easier to follow. Number 2, noticing tangible, lasting results coming from this practice that you've done. Number 3, easily able to employ this tool to get the results you want. And number 4, feeling yourself returning now, mind waking up, body waking up, feeling better than before. And when I say 5, with the next number, you can open your eyes, refreshed, alert, and awake. Number 5.